Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Voices. We got a special guest today, and his name is Dan Kutcher. He is the mayor of Summerside. Dan, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Harold. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And for all the listeners from around the world, wherever you may be, please download this podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, and a host other platforms. Now, Dan, the last time we tried and we had little technical glitches, isn't that true?
Sure.
Well, anyway, so we're back on live, my friend, and this is good. Again, welcome to Breaking Voices, and hopefully everything go well. Not an issue with the technical problems we've been having earlier.
I think we'll be good.
All right. So, Dan, you are the mayor of Summerside. Tell us about Summerside and where it's located in Canada, if you may.
Yeah, for sure, Harold. So Summerside's a city of about 16,500 people in Prince Edward Island, which is a Canadian province. We are. I can see the ocean from both sides at a point in Summerside, so I can see the water on both sides. So for folks around the world, Prince Edward Island is the big sandbar in the Atlantic Ocean here.
Absolutely.
So we are the city by the sea, and we got a pretty cool community here. We have our own electric utility, so we have a solar farm and a wind farm, and we generate more than 60% of our own electricity here in the borders of the city. That is fully clean and renewable, which is great. And we've got a really interesting and dynamic and growing city. We've been growing a lot in the past number of years, so we got a lot of new challenges, but a whole bunch of new opportunities. So it's a great spot to be.
Awesome. So, Dan, for listeners who haven't heard much about you across probably the world yet, tell us a little bit about yourself. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and what the projects are coming up down the road and what the plans for the city is.
Sure, Harold. So yeah, I've lived in Summerside for about 12 years. We moved here from St. John's. I grew up across different places in Canada. I lived overseas in the UK and in the US. So I moved around a lot through my life. Met my wife, chased her to Newfoundland, and then followed her here to Summerside, Prince Edward Island. We came on a Friday for a site visit and bought a house on the Monday and decided that's where we were going to settle down and create our home. And we've got
Awesome.
two great, lively, going concerned kids, and they keep us busy. And that's we live a life like a lot of other people, running around trying to hold it all together and get kids on the bus in the morning and figure out who's picking up who later in the day and what's for supper. So we're, like pretty much everybody else, that we have our own regular life here, and then here in our community, we've like I said at the beginning there, we're growing a lot. We've grown about 10% in the last few years. The city's booming. There's tons of residential and commercial construction happening, which is great. And our community's changing and evolving. It's becoming more diverse and more inclusive. And we have got some real great history here in our city. And now we're creating some new history here as well these days. So it's a really exciting time to be the mayor in the city of Summerside.
Awesome, Dan. And I read that you're a lawyer also. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. When I entered into the world of work, I worked in politics for a number of years, Harold. I worked in Ottawa and Parliament Hill, and then Queen's Park in Toronto, Ontario. And after a couple of elections there, I decided I didn't want to do that for my whole life. It was a great experience, but I went back and went to law school and practiced law and did commercial law with specialization in food law. So I did a lot of work for buyers, processors, producers, exporters, importers in the food and beverage industry, which was fantastic. Did that for a while, got jealous of a lot of clients and realized that I'd rather go into business myself, and I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And sold my business a few years ago. and had the opportunity to sit back and figure out what to do next. And been really involved in our community in a whole bunch of different organizations and all different aspects across our city. And the time was right I thought there was time for a change at City Hall, and but luckily residents of Summerside thought so too, and it gave me this opportunity, and humbled by it ever since.
Well, man, you have been doing a lot of work in the city of Summerside, and a lot of projects is going on. If you don't mind telling us some of the projects that you have currently on stream.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and it's not just me. It's like as a mayor, or I guess, or politician, he's trying. People want to put you. You're the one who's got to stand up at the podium and say, "Look at
That's
this
true.
great project we did." And the reality is that it's all the other people who are
I
with you
know.
doing all the hard work. But I guess that goes both ways. When people aren't happy too, you're the one up in front of everyone. But so none of these types of things happen without an incredible team, and we do have a fantastic team, both here in the community as a whole, but also here at City Hall and at City Council. So
Awesome.
when I look at the priorities that we have that we're working on now, first and foremost has been housing, and will continue to be housing. The cities in Canada, at least here, that get housing right and get the housing built that we need across this country, but to get the right type of housing built and get it built quickly will be the places that do well and succeed, and their residents will do well, not just now, but into the future. And I think we're right at the front of the pack there, but that's when you're up at the front, that's when you got to make sure you put your foot down even further, because you got to stay on top of it. So for us, our real focus as a community and as a city right now is to get younger. Summerside is one of the older, demographically speaking, cities in PEI, and PEI is one of the oldest provinces demographically. Again, is the oldest province in Canada. The Maritimes are the oldest region. So we really need to make sure that we're focusing on building communities for young working families in order to help take care of our older adults who are here today. So that's the lens that we put decision making through, and that has given us some real new energy and vibrancy.
Well, you got all the energy in the world, my friend, and I know you're certainly going to succeed in this area. But tell me, Dan, there is some issues with respect to healthcare in the province of PEI, and also Summerside is affected some way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one, there's healthcare challenges across the country and across the province, and those are big challenges that people are working on. It for your listeners outside of Prince Edward Island in Canada, the municipal governments, we don't, outside of providing clean drinking water and removal of wastewater, which is pretty significant from a health perspective. We don't play a role in the delivery of healthcare services. But the way we do look at it is that when the nurses, physicians, lab techs, admin staff, maintenance staff, whenever the people who hold our hospitals and our medical clinics and medical centers together and make them work for our community, when they leave their places of work, then they're our responsibility. So we do have a role to play in how we build community, how we retain the people we need, and how we attract others. So we're very active in that space. Here in Summerside, we've, like anywhere, we face our own individual challenges, and we have some hurdles that come up along the way. And right now we're working as a community through some of those. They're within the broader context, but there is, we continue to sort of put the pressure on the folks that have the ability to deliver some of the changes that I think we need here, particularly in our hospital. And we've been pretty vocal about that, but that's an important role for us to play. And I think it's important for a community to speak openly and speak respectfully. And that's sort of how we try and approach everything. We don't, when you take your problems and try and shuffle them away or look the other way or ignore them, I don't think you get good solutions. So yeah, we've got challenges, but we've got some real great people here. And I'm also totally biased. My wife's a physician, and my brother and his wife, and we live across the street from each other, and so we want to see, they want to make sure that we can keep their colleagues and the nursing colleagues and the health professionals here in our city.
Well, those are great ambitions, obviously, that you have, and the councillors, I would think, and the MLAs. Another topic I must talk to you about is what do you see yourself achieving in your term as mayor in the city? What are some of the projects you have in mind that you would like to see accomplished?
Sure, that's a good question, Harold. So for the way I always look at this stuff is that I'll be happy if people's lives whenever I leave and they choose to help me leave or I leave.
Yeah,
Yeah, that people's lives would be better off than they would have been if I wasn't there. So that's how I always think of success in these roles. I think the public service is just that. I think it's a service, and I think public service is really important. And if you do it well, and you can really help create some great things and make some significant impacts in people's lives. And at the political level, I always think that personally, at least, that you want to have people come from outside of politics to come into it, make their contributions, do their best at the time with what's before them, and make good decisions for an entire community, and then pass it on to somebody else, because these aren't politics isn't a profession. It is
I do.
yeah, it is more of a call-in for a period of time. So, and when I look around our city now, it's the priorities in terms of building the spaces and places and community that we need for young working families, revitalizing and transforming our downtown and our waterfront, getting the housing built that we need for the people who are here today and those tomorrow, and making sure we continue to build a more welcoming, inclusive, diverse, and accessible community. Those are our sort of top priorities. And then it also is to make sure we do the things that we do really, really well, and continue to do those well. And for us as a city, it's the core services and infrastructure. So that's, your roads, your sidewalks, your playgrounds, your police, your fire, water and sewer, and our sports and entertainment sector. And we have a really strong focus on sports entertainment here in the city of Summerside.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the work that we've done before me and that we're carrying on in the sustainable energy space, and building a low carbon community that not only does our part for mitigating the effects of climate change, and also trying to adapt to them. So we turned on our latest project here maybe a month or two ago. We just built the biggest solar farm in Atlantic Canada, right here in the city of Summerside, 80 something acres, 44,000 solar panels. And today I've got my blinds closed here as best I can. It's a sunny day. Last week on a sunny day, we were running at 100% solar and wind energy here in our city. So those are great projects so far. And now we look at what we can do next. We're starting to make a play potentially on hydrogen. So how can we take our solar energy and our wind energy and store that in more efficient ways? We have a large battery attached to our solar farm, which is great. That can we could power our entire city for about 5 hours. But now it's also, how do we find other ways to replace things like the diesel generators that we still have as our backup? And so we're into the exploratory phases on looking at different fuel sources such as hydrogen, which is pretty exciting.
Awesome. Well, listen, those are big projects. And,
yeah, they're pretty good.
I know the last time we had this big storm here, Summerside was actually running in probably 2 days after, or a day and a half.
Yeah, we had Fiona, I guess, the tropical storm, or whenever it was, almost a hurricane. That really decimated a lot of Prince Edward Island. You can still see it here, even in Summerside, right? When you go to our natural parks here, there's still trees that are leaning and holding on. Yeah, a couple of things there. We're a little lucky too. 60 kilometers to the east, winds were higher, but we've also our infrastructure is built up a little more here. So just from like the gauge size of the wires that we use for our electrical, our utility poles are a little more robust. But the reality is there's going to be more storms, and they are going to be more frequent, and they're going to be stronger. And as much as we do all this work on the climate mitigation stuff and try and reduce our carbon footprint, we are on a sandbar in the ocean. And like I said, you can see the water from both sides, which is great. But in a hurricane, it's not. So
I,
we have lots of work and preparation, and we continue to do that stuff on climate adaptation. So how do we adapt for this giant changing climate and the realities of the world that we live in today?
yeah, I often wonder, you have traveled quite a bit in your life, and when you visit places like Singapore and those other Eastern countries, you find that there is a lot of technology that goes on there, and then we at the other end, we are very sort of a dormant in a sense. Do you think about sometime into the future that you're going to bring some of those technologies into Summerside or probably across the island?
Yeah, no, I love that kind of stuff. As a whole, as a country, I know we're not. We do suffer from innovation in Canada, and I'm not sure if our continued growing population sometimes always worry. Sometimes that holds back some of the innovations that are required in places when you do have population pressures. You have to figure out how to do things more efficiently. But when I look at it as a municipality, also we have to figure out what we can do for a place that's our size. But yeah, I'm super keen and interested in ways to adapt and adopt technology and deploy it in a way that works for residents in a municipal context. So whether that's, and you'll hear me, I talk about this stuff here at City Hall, and sometimes I get, oh no, here goes the mayor again with some other crazy project that's going to take forever to try and figure out. But the ones that really get me excited is I'd love for our city to adopt an app so we could use a singular app for the city to do things like pay your electrical bill, sign your kids up for lessons, know when your library is open and closed, see when there's community events, sort of an all-purpose interface through your mobile device. And then the other one that I'm really interested in and that we're starting to sort of scratch the surface in is how do we deploy AI in a variety of ways? Because we do already in our electrical grid. We have an AI company here in Summerside that we work with called Blue Wave, and they help manage our electrical electrical load, and we have some devices in homes as well through a program that we have called Heat for Less, and they manage our solar and manages our wind and deploys electricity throughout the city. But I also look at, are there ways for us to deploy more AI into everything that we do, from how we manage our finance department manages all of its data and information, to how the city interfaces and communicates with residents. So I think it's a really interesting time, and it's an exciting time in that space. Again, the places that get it right will be the ones at the front end. And you don't want to be first, but you want to be last. I always think you want to sort of be around, fourth, fifth, sixth, somewhere in there. So that, let the initial adopters make a couple of the mistakes and then come in just as they start getting it right. So it's about finding the
I got you,
because it's taxpayer dollars that you are using to try and deliver things, and you need to do that as responsibly as possible, and you need to treat that as you would treat your own finances. So you need to make sure that you are making sensible decisions and investments for your community. Again, one of the things we have here in Summerside is one of our sort of values as a city is that we're not risk adverse. We are prepared to take calculated risks, and doing that has paid off for the city over a number of years with some significant projects, and we also get things done, and we get them done pretty quick. So we understand what our core values are and what we're good at, and we keep making sure we do those things.
Yeah. Dan, one of the things that happen on the island, as you know, a lot of people is complaining that food prices are very expensive. And I remember when I traveled to Singapore and those places, they have a lot of green technologies, and especially greenhouses. And most of those buildings are actually um, is made up in such a way that there are always greenhouses around, surrounding, or on top of the buildings.
Mm.
Have you ever thought about probably down the road that something like this would come to PEI? So you
Yeah,
grow your own vegetables?
yeah, totally. You know, I was talking to someone who builds greenhouses here the other day. He says food insecurity is a big issue. I've done a lot of work again as a food lawyer, and then also as a community volunteer in a number of places. I've done a lot of work in food security,
Hmm.
and it's really almost never been worse, except for some of our more remote communities here in Canada. But yeah, certainly the price of everything from just produce and price and availability of um, produce and foodstuffs has gone up and has become more and more prohibitive for people. And so you try and there's really not much we can do as a city on that.
Hmm.
Cost of living, food prices, inflation, those things are way outside of the scope of what a city can do. So we have to think, how do we respond as a community? So we've been looking at ways to be able to promote better food security. So whether that's pretty simple stuff like expanding our community gardens, which we've been doing, working with neighborhoods when neighborhood associations want to set up their own community gardens to grow their own food, trying to support food programs in our community, like our community fridges and our food box programs that so many of our
Hmm.
nonprofits put on. And then you get to something like the greenhouse, which super interesting. But I said I was in here talking the other day with someone who's building greenhouses,
Hmm.
but we're talking about waiving the building permits, although for greenhouses in our community, although most of them are at a size already that there isn't a building permit fee or requirement for one.
Hmm.
Um, but to put an 8x10 greenhouse to it's $3,500, and usually folks don't have $3,500, which is why you need the greenhouse, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Greenhouse
for
to try
sure.
and find ways. So um, I'm also a big believer in trying to create and connect people who can create solutions themselves, because we
Hmm.
can't,
Yeah.
the community, just be relying on government to do everything, because the government's not going to do a good enough job or do enough. And so hopefully there are more ways we can explore and connect people to look at things like greenhouse for 5 or 6 houses, right? Like
Hmm.
that's how I see, seeing communities hopefully respond. And then there's all the benefits of, again, when we have gardens at our house, whenever we move, we immediately start planting garden stuffs that produce food.
Yeah, yeah, of
And whether
course.
that's cherry trees or your blueberries or your raspberries or
Yeah.
your tomatoes, like, um, and Harold, a restaurant owner, and I'm a former restaurant owner. I used to get into that business because you also have a love for food and have that as well, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
we're one of the things we're looking at doing here, and this will be coming out in the next few weeks. We'll be starting this discussion. Is we're trying to have more community discussions around topics like food security, and I've been trying to figure out a way to have those discussions and have a format of those discussions where people can then create partnerships
Hmm.
and come to the discussion, not to just share everything they want to do, but to come to the discussion, share things they want to do, listen to others, and then find others that they can help solve
Absolutely.
fix some of the things that are there. And so that's where I think government and municipal government can play a really good role, is trying to enable people and connect them to create a variety of solutions. Sorry,
Awesome.
long
And
answer
yeah,
for you.
I know you have a Mayor's Day, and you tell people about the Mayor's Day that those who have questions about the city could actually come
Oh
to your
yeah,
office.
my open office. So I think it's really important to be approachable as the mayor. You can never hide. You can't go to you go to the grocery store, you're still the mayor. You go to the rink, the Fair Skate,
Yep, you're still.
whatever, the baseball field, um, and that's fine. That's you signed up for that.
Yeah.
But one of the things I did right at the very beginning, I said, look, every Friday morning, I'm just going to have an open door policy here at City Hall in the mayor's office, and have a
Hmm.
boardroom immediately adjacent to my office. And
Right.
every Friday morning for 2 hours, it's whoever wants to come in and talk about whatever. It's open. So, you can come in, you don't need an appointment. You don't need to schedule anything.
Just walking.
Yeah, you can walk in, and sometimes people walk in with PhDs in environmental science, and they want to build tiny forests, and then next thing you know, we're planting tiny forests in the city. So, or someone comes in and is upset about parking tickets, and I just tell them there's nothing I can do about that. So, the whole
I
mix, we
remember
get a whole mixed bag here that I never know what's
exact.
going to happen Friday morning, but I really reserve my Friday mornings for that, and that's a really important part of my week. And
Yeah.
also reserve my Monday mornings, and it's not like a public time, but I always take my Monday mornings and use that time to sort of explore bigger issues that are happening in other cities around the world, and I use that as sort of my chance to start my week off with getting inspired and thinking and looking and learning about what other places are doing. So I try and sort of bookend my week with both of those.
Great. And so, what sort of an advice you have for young people coming up in the city of Summerside or PEI who wants to move ahead or probably want to get into politics or whatever the career goal might be? What advice you have for them?
Yeah, well, with some young kids of my own growing up, that's a really good question. Um, I think one is you have to get you just need to get involved in your community, and look at it as an opportunity to learn as well, right? There's one
Yeah.
of the things that I think younger folks sometimes struggle with is some of the structure stuff can seem really boring. Right? A
Right.
committee meeting, you sit down at a board meeting and call the meeting to order, and take all these procedural steps. And I think when you're younger, it's like, come on, let's get on with it, which is good. You want to
Yeah.
keep that energy, but there's a lot of value in some of that structure, right? Because it helps focus and get you going the right way. But the one of the best things about the size of a place like Summerside is that we're big enough that there's the opportunities here, and we're small enough that you can really connect with other people who want to do things. And in order to get anything, in my opinion, in order to get anything really substantive and exciting done, you don't do that kind of stuff alone. You got to inspire others and get inspired by others. So reaching out is the first thing, and we've got a youth committee setting up here now in Summerside because some high school students came and said, look, we want to, they've got their own podcast, the train station, I think it's called. And they said, look, we got issues affect us in our community. I totally agree with them, and often say that we don't do a good enough job listening to younger generations
Yeah.
uh, who have a very different perspective on the world. Like, again, the 15-year-olds today have a totally different, they're in a completely different world than when I was 15, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
we absolutely need to listen and understand them and try and understand the world, how they see the world, because I think a lot of them are really intelligent and want to contribute, and there's a lot of value there. So you just really, as mayor, you're really trying to unlock and empower people to contribute and build a more interesting and exciting community.
Great. And so before you go, Dan, I just want to ask you whether or not you are planning to probably move from the position of mayor down the road into probably federal politics. Do you have any plans for that?
No, Harold, I love cities. I think cities are so fascinating. They are where the action happens. I've always loved cities.
Yeah.
If I was the only one in charge of taking family vacations, we'd always be going to cities. But although this spring we're doing a week in New York, taking my kids there, which is
Okay.
one of my favorite cities in the world. And there's so many corners to explore and things to
Sure.
discover. And cities really are where all the kind of the action happens, but
Yeah.
they're also the only natural political governing unit. Right,
Yeah.
in a lot of provinces or states or territories and countries, there's a lot of arbitrary borders drawn all over the place. And cities are where, for millennia, people have come together to create good things. Like, you don't have art, you don't have culture if you don't have cities.
True.
You don't have agriculture really without the agriculture that you have today without cities. And I really think we are certainly into the era of the city again. And I'm super excited and happy to be doing exactly what it is I'm doing. And I tell you as well, like, the fact that it takes me 6 minutes to get to work, and if I have to drive down, or if in the summer if I can get on the bike and come down, it takes me 8.
And yeah,
That's pretty darn good, man.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
very happy where we are. Yeah.
So you ride to work sometimes, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you
absolutely.
do, eh?
Yeah, yeah, as best I can. Like sometimes if I have to go to spot, a bunch of different places, then it makes it a
Oh,
challenge.
this is
Yeah,
something else. This is fantastic.
yeah, we've got a great, we've got a great city even to cycle in and to get around in. So I can jump on the
Yeah,
trail at my house, and I'm on the trail basically until I get to work. So
awesome.
it's cool. It's great. Yeah.
For sure. So before you leave, Dan, what is the message for the people of Summerside or people who are developing in new communities across Canada, wherever they may be, how they could probably do something for their community to grow?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's find people who have similar passions to you that are different than you,
Hmm. Yeah.
and you need to be able to. You learn a lot when you take the time to understand other people's perspectives, and connect with people who you may otherwise wouldn't connect with. Right? When you think of your day-to-day life, the places you go and the things you do that are really sort of, they're driven by a whole bunch of them. They're driven by what you need to do and where you need to take people, and then what your routines become. And even when you're in any kind of community, you need to get outside of that path sometimes, because there's a lot of really really interesting people
Oh,
with
yeah.
your interests traveling on other ones that you can connect with. So I think the connection is really important, and connection is also changed, right? Connections,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
how we connect electronically has totally changed. The formats like this is different, but there's also still so much value in connecting with people when you're walking down the street and pop into your neighbor and say hello. And the personal connections and the physical spaces that you build in cities and in communities aren't just good because they get you out and walking, and they're good for the environment and all those types of things, but they're good because they create connections and and touch points for exciting things to happen.
And I think you're the right person for the city, man, as mayor. Well, Dan, it has been a pleasure.
Thanks, Harold.
I know we were a bit late on in the studio here, but thanks again for coming in. And this will be broadcast down the road on YouTube, just to let you know. So
Cool. Sounds great. And I
yeah,
love
so
everything you're doing, man. I think it's super cool. You keep at it, and
yeah,
I also love coming in and getting my
your
jerk chicken,
your
man.
jerk chicken, right?
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
go.
you bet.
Okay.
All right.
Well, Dan, well, thank you so much, my friend.
Hey, buddy.
Um, and I'm going to probably hit end recording now.
Awesome. Thanks, Harold.
All right, Dan.